Good morning. For those of you who are on with us, we will get started here in just a couple of minutes. Give some folks a couple more minutes to log on this morning. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get things started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Osowski. I'm the marketing director for the Lee County VCB. I'm feeling super energized this morning to see so many of our industry partners here with us to participate in this first of 3 data webinars that we're presenting this year. So welcome, everybody. I know that I speak for both myself and our executive director, Tam Pygott, when I say that we're really excited about this. We've wanted to get some research-focused educational sessions going for quite some time. So this is some exciting stuff. So my role this morning is to take care of some housekeeping items before introducing our presenters. First of all, this webinar is being recorded in case you'd like to go back and re-listen to it for reference. We'll post it on the new industry website at leevcb.com. If you have any questions as we're going through the content today, please feel free to use the question feature, and we will do our best to address them either in the middle of the presentation, or we're also trying to save 10 or 15 minutes for some Q&A at the end of the webinar this morning. Okay, let's jump right into some introductions. First up is Alana Patton. She's the VP Group Media Director at our agency, MMGY Global, where she oversees the media division and is responsible for all programs, negotiations, deployments, and optimization of all media campaigns. She has over 15 years of industry experience, and we're super lucky to have her guiding our media strategy for the islands, beaches, and neighborhoods of Fort Myers. Next is TJ Walls, the Director of Data Management, also at our agency, MMGY Global. TJ leads the analytics and data teams to execute custom audience segmentation. He builds and maintains marketing dashboards, develops media performance measurements that yield marketing strategies, and manages the agency's relationships with database partners across the board. And finally, Timony Axtell is the VP of Industry Relations for Arrivalist, our featured partner this morning, where she's been since 2018. Now, Arrivalist uses mobile location data of all of our devices to provide actionable consumer insights. It's one of the most widely accepted media measurement platforms in the industry today. It allows destinations like ours to close the loop on the visitor journey from seeing and interacting with our digital ad placements to actually arriving in the destination. Timony has served on the eTourism Summit Advisory Board, which is a forward-thinking forum of people that have a deep understanding of digital marketing. The founder of eTourism Summit, Jake Steinman, spoke about Timony and said that she's somebody who combines the appreciation of data marketing with creative ideas. In fact, ideas are her superpower. So we're glad that Timony is going to bring some superpowers to us this morning. No pressure, Timony. In her role, she consults with destinations like ours about ways that device attribution technology can deliver media exposure and visitation reporting accurate down to just 30 feet. So we're glad to have Timony and all our presenters joining us this morning. Thank you all for being here. With that, Alana, I'll toss things to you and invite you to kick things off.
Great, thank you, Brian. We're so excited to be here today talking about data and research. We have quite a few things to get to today, including just an overview of how we even got to today, the roadmap that we've been on, and where we'll go throughout the remainder of this calendar year. We'll talk about a new dashboard that we'll be rolling out soon. We'll talk about the remaining webinars that Brian mentioned for the year, and then we'll quickly get to our data feature with Arrivalist. We're really excited to share some of these details with the broader industry. So in terms of how we even got here today, it really started with an interest in the VCB wanting to share more of their research and resources with the industry, wanting to ensure that all of you were just as informed as the VCB and the agency team are in terms of making data-driven decisions. A lot of what we've been thinking about and working toward to get here today is really powered by just the interest in wanting to ensure that everyone is recognizing the trends, why they matter to the destination, and how we can all leverage what's happening and just the trends at large. So in terms of the overall data roadmap for this calendar year, we'll be covering off on quite a few things, really, again, driven by the interest in wanting to inform your direct marketing efforts with as much data as possible. We've worked toward, not just putting on to the webinar today, but quite a bit of back-end infrastructure as well, including that dashboard that we'll talk about here in a minute, and ensuring as well that we're bringing you customized actionable insights that you can take away from today's meeting, take away from the dashboard, and really, bring your efforts to life. So as we think about these specific opportunities, we've got three things in the pipeline. First up is the industry newsletter. This goes out monthly. It's the From the Bureau newsletter. I'm sure you all get it and anxiously await it every month on the 1st. Moving forward and starting in May, there will be an inclusion with some data insights that can help inform your efforts going forward. That will also point to a refreshed leavecb.com dashboard. TJ is going to walk us through that in just a minute, and then that will be released with the May newsletter. And then I think one of the things we're most excited about are these quarterly insights webinars, the first one being today. In a few slides, you'll see the dates for the remainder of the year, but we're very excited to bring overall insights and several of our key agency and key VCB partners to the industry to help inform our actions. And then I'll turn it over to TJ. He's going to do a quick walkthrough of the industry insights dashboard that we'll be rolling out very soon.
Thanks, Alana. And so as Alana mentioned, a lot of the culmination of the work that we've had over the course of the last year has been bringing this data together in a way that is digestible and easily made available to the industry. So on May 1st, we are excited to be able to announce that on leavecb.com, there will be an industry insights dashboard that is publicly facing that will allow you to tap into a lot of the data resources that leavecb has themselves. The data sources are going to be brought in and updated on a monthly basis, and there is some historical data, in some cases back to 2019, so we can be comparing some pre-pandemic and post-pandemic travel trends. The data sources are going to include some county bed tax collection and performance, some star data hotel metrics made available via Smith Travel Research. We're going to be bringing in Visit Fort Myers website performance so we can understand how website traffic from different areas of the country is changing over time. Overall visitation trends made available from Arrivalist, which Timony Axtell is going to be speaking to today. We have some data made available from Key Data Dashboard, and if you're not familiar with them, they focus on the vacation rental market. We also have data from Visa that is showing where credit card spend is being spent in the market and from where those visitors are coming. And then last, from Sojourn, we have some travel behavior travel planning behavior data for flight and hotels, or flight and hotel bookings. So I quickly want to go over the layout of this dashboard. I'm not going to dig into the data specifically, but just what you can expect on it. So as I mentioned, this is going to live in a Tableau created dashboard that is hosted on VCB.com. It's a mouthful. And it is going to be arranged in just this way. As I progress through these slides, it would be as if I'm scrolling down the website. So on the top left, you can see our bed tax data. And anytime we can bring in year-over-year comparisons, we are doing so at the monthly basis. The user will have the ability to dig in to monthly data by selecting the date. You can see it says December 2021 up there. You can change the date, and the data will reflect the date range that you select. We are also bringing in RSW passenger report data. There's the Smith Travel star data up on the top right. We have the website performance below the bed tax and the RSW passenger report data. On the middle right there, we see the vacation rental data made available by key data. And anytime we can visualize via a map or a stack rank of market contribution or visitation contribution, we have, in this case right here, we have the web traffic that is from visitfortmyers.com. Next, as we scroll down, we're going to have highlighting the top 10 out-of-state and top in-state markets for arrivals as measured via Arrivalist. And we also have the ability to toggle and look at how long these individuals are staying in market. Next, we have the Visa Destination Insights that's made available from Visa credit card spend. On the left, we'll have a breakout of, for the quarter in question, a resident versus non-resident spend volume. And we'll also, in the middle, we have a non-resident look at spend from residents of Florida, or I should say travelers from Florida and travelers that are coming from out of state. And then digging into out-of-state markets on the right, we're looking at, again, for those markets in question, where the top out-of-state, I believe there's 10 there, where the top credit card spend is coming from. Next, we have some key data dashboard data. Again, this is looking at vacation rental. And in this case, we are visualizing this to understand how far ahead of time bookings are being made for a specific month. So we can see here we have a look at December 2021 bookings and where, this is looking at the week in which the booking was made for bookings in December 21 to understand how far ahead of time individuals are booking. And then last, as we was going to get to the very bottom, and certainly not least, we have our data made available by Sojourn. And this is looking at how far ahead of time individuals who are booking hotels in the Fort Myers area and flights to either RSW or PGD, how far ahead of time they are making those bookings, all with the effort of, or in the interest of knowing how far ahead of time we need to be investing in different markets to drive demand at different times of the year. So as I mentioned, May 1st, this will be made available. We're super excited about being able to roll this out, and I'm certainly proud of the work that our team has put behind it. So with that, we have one quick announcement before we turn it over to Timony. Quickly wanted to let you guys know, outside of this feature with Arrivalist, on May 9th, we will be welcoming Expedia and Sojourn to do a similar rundown of data that they have access to and bring to the table. And then our third webinar for the year is going to be on September 13th, and that is going to be featuring key data dashboard highlighting a lot of the vacation rental trends. So with that, then I will go ahead and turn it over to Timony.
Thank you, TJ, and good morning, everyone. I'm Timony from Arrivalist, and I'd like to thank the VCB for having Arrivalist this morning. Okay. So today we're going to walk through some data points and insights from 2019 to 2021. Let's see. Just want to make sure that my screen share is showing.
Timony, we're seeing a white screen right now.
Okay, let me try this again.
That looks great.
Okay, perfect, everyone. All right, so today we're going to walk through some data points, but most importantly, we want to provide you some actionable insights. At Arrivalist, we really believe that we need to get data into the hands of the stakeholders who can take action. And as cliche as it sounds, we really believe that a rising tide will lift all the boats. So if the DMO is taking actionable insights and individual hoteliers and small business owners are as well, that will make for an ideal recovery from this pandemic. So our agenda today, it's a little lengthy, but we want to make sure that you understand Arrivalist's methodology and how location data works. Then we'll take a step out and look at Florida as a whole and how Lee County represents competitive share within the state of Florida. We'll look at some year-over-year trends, break out fly versus drive, and then talk about what visitors are doing when they cross over the threshold into Lee County and go to your establishments. After that, we'll open it up for questions and answers. So first of all, location data. Arrivalist sources our location data from GPS, from two different panels. One is a smartphone panel that is over 100 million smartphones here in the US. We extrapolate to the US adult population of 250 million in these figures that we'll share. And we also have a connected car panel where we're receiving GPS from cars that travel around the US. We'll really be concentrating on the smartphone panel here today, but we'll work on some of that GPS data. Just to let you know, it's all anonymous. We gather this data and observe movement from place to place, just so destinations, hoteliers, airports, etc., basically anyone in the travel industry who's a client can be a better marketer. It's not about individuals, it's about trends that you can act on. And we have all sorts of use cases, from helping Florida destinations understand what happens when a hurricane hits, where people evacuate to, where they stay in Florida during that time, advocacy use cases, and then things like media measurement and how well media is performing after it's deployed. We answer these very basic questions with location data, and then our clients and their stakeholders take action to make it meaningful. So at a very basic level, where are visitors from? The state level, DMA, even by zip code, where are they going, which cities in Lee County, which points of interest are they visiting? When are they arriving? We know that a visitor from Illinois might be very different from a visitor from Georgia in terms of seasonality. We know how long visitors are staying, what kind of media exposures culminated in a trip to the destination, whether they visited an airport or they arrived via car, and some other questions. So we will dwell on a few of these as we go through today. And then just want to give you an idea of what is included and what is not included. We know, as TJ mentioned, in MMGY, you have all sorts of research instruments that are going to paint a full picture. This is really one perspective, observing smartphone movement. And what we're looking at is, one, it's domestic visitation, and it's also adults. We do not track children on their smartphones. We're also not tracking international here. We are extrapolating to that US adult population. And the way we set up this model we're looking at today is we're looking at trips of at least 50 miles from home to Lee County. We actually record those trips once someone has gone back home. So that means we're not looking at one-way trips. We also filter out people like commuters who are in and out frequently. So it's a high bar, but a reasonable bar to count as a visitor to Lee County. And again, we will work in some of those connected vehicle trips as well. Just wanted to give you an idea of what we observe and what we don't observe or count in our analysis, in case this is a little bit different from other research that you've looked at. So just to give you some ideas of the sample size, so this is one thing that's really exciting about location data, is because we're observing movement and we're using GPS, we're looking at trillions of data pings on a monthly basis. So in 2021 for Lee County, we observed nearly 500,000 panel trips. So that's a half a million real trips from outside of 50 miles into Lee County, and projected that out to US adults of nearly 10 million US adult trips. We also observed nearly 1 million point of interest trips extrapolated out to 22.7 million US adult trips. And then another angle, and we won't dig into this today, but we are measuring the effectiveness of media, and we observed over 60,000 digital media exposed arrivals to Lee County. So working with substantial volume here as a basis. And that 60,000 is going to be a small subset of the total media exposed. We are working from a panel of smartphones. So here, we're going to zoom out to the Florida level. And what I want to show you, so we work with Florida, we observe movement through and into the state of Florida. And so I keep an eye on how the county rankings are stacking up. And what is interesting here is that Lee County, when we're looking at the top 10 destination counties in Florida for overnights in Florida from visitors, we see that Lee County since 2019 has actually gained competitive share, so a bit of a silver lining during the pandemic when we look at Florida as a whole. In 2019, Lee County was responsible for 3.7% of total overnight trips in the state. And during 2020, where 3 of those quarters were really impacted, 2.5 quarters were impacted by COVID, it actually rose up to 4.4% when you had people coming across the state. Their beaches were closed on the East Coast, where people were coming to the West Coast of Florida. And then in 2021, while the ranking has gone down slightly as some of these other destinations have recovered, you can see that Lee County has maintained its competitive share since 2020. So those rankings are changing every year, but you can see that Lee County is solidly there in the top 10. And what's also interesting is that when we looked at length of stay of these top 10 destination counties in Florida, Lee County and Osceola County actually had the highest length of stay for their overnights. So now going into some general visitation insights, and these are going to be specific to Lee County. Not looking at Florida anymore. So this is an Arrivalist dashboard. You'll see it's very different from the MMGY dashboard where they're pulling in multiple data sources. This is purely location data. So this is a location data dashboard only. And what we're presenting are some of the key performance indicators. Things like total volume, length of stay, average miles traveled from a panelist home, which is what you see in that 708 miles in the top. And then if we look below, we'll see what is driving those averages, because we know averages don't tell the full story. That 708.6 miles is actually driven by those 500-mile visitors, and 31.8% bring those 100 to 250 mile visitors. That's distance from a panelist home to Lee County. You get a sense, very high level of seasonality, even which days the visitors are coming in. We can see that it's a very leisure-driven destination with those Friday and Saturday visitors. The average nights of overnight visitors of 3.8 nights, that basically translates to about 5 days. So 3.8 nights is equivalent to 4.8 days. And then how that is broken out. And we've excluded day trips in this particular analysis. And of those overnight visitors, nearly half are staying at least 4 nights. You can see here at the top left, the individual origin markets, and on the right, the origin markets by state. And what you'll see is that about 4 in 10 of those overnight trips are from in-state visitors versus about 6 in 10 are coming from out of state. So let's concentrate on those out-of-state visitors for a moment and learn a bit more about them. So here you can see we've docked off the Florida visitor. We're just looking at out-of-state visitation, and the picture really changes where the Midwest really lights up. You can see that over 10% of your out-of-state overnight visitors are from the state of Ohio, and nearly 10% are from Illinois. You see this average distance traveled, geographically, they're going to be traveling at least 500 miles, most of them. It jumps up to over 1,000 miles traveled. The length of stay jumps up by an entire night, and that composition changes. You could see that spring break is the strongest month, followed by July. This is broken out by month. Just know that July is largely skewed by that 4th of July holiday. So let's talk a bit more about the out-of-state visitor here. The out-of-state visitor, you can see here, Chicago, New York, Minneapolis, Detroit, Cleveland, a lot of Midwestern markets here. Out-of-state visitors are actually gaining importance. It is subtle, but important. So the out-of-state visitor is responsible for, again, nearly 6 in 10 overnight trips to Lee County. And that has actually increased since 2019 at 58.2%. So the blue is in-state, the green is out-of-state. You can see this was turned on its head during 2020, where a lot of Florida, we're just trying to get Florida visitors to help the destinations recover. Again, you had that migration of people from East Coast to West Coast destinations. So in 2020, there were more in-state visitors, which was important because they help destinations recover, even if they were just there for a day trip and not a longer trip. So again, out-of-state visitors are becoming increasingly important to the destination. So we're going to give you some insights on where they come from and what you can learn about their behaviors. Length of stay. Obviously, your out-of-state visitors are staying significantly longer. Your in-state visitors are also staying longer than they did in 2019, staying an average of 2.3 nights as opposed to 2.1. So that's a win. Not quite as long as they did in 2020, where they may have been mixing more work and leisure, but higher than 2019. In here too, the out-of-state visitor is staying nearly as long as they did in 2019 at 4.8 nights, as opposed to 4.9 in 2019. Now we'll talk about a concept that I call gravitational force, and that is how far, it's that average distance traveled from a panelist home. And I like this metric because it gives you a sense of that force that's pulling the visitor in. They're coming to beautiful beaches and they're having an experience, an urban and beach experience that they can't have somewhere else. So they are willing to travel a great distance. And in 2021, you'll see that distance has largely rebounded from 2019 at 1,087 miles traveled from home for those out-of-state visitors, as opposed to 1,108 miles before the pandemic. But it's at 98% of those pre-pandemic levels. So you can get a sense here in terms of length of stay and also distance travel with those out-of-state visitors that the destination is largely recovering when we look at these specific KPIs. Now, we know that volume isn't everything. We looked at volume. We've also looked at length of stay. Is there a better way to put these two together and a way to show both quantity and quantity? We know that sustainability is very important. For some destinations are really focused on yield or quality, I should say, over quantity. And some it's still all about recovery. We would see Lee County, this being a candidate, to really starting to focus on yield. So we want to break out these visitors here. And this is how we do it. We plot on that x-axis, horizontal there, the average unique days that are being spent in market, and then on that vertical y-axis, the share of trips. When we put those two together, we have this metric called trip nights. It's basically the average length of stay times the share of all of the trips. It's just overnight visitors. And then we can express that as a percentage. So what you see in those gray boxes is the share of total trip nights that each destination is responsible. So that percentage and the size of that sphere, those mean the same thing. So you can see very clearly here on the left, these are your in-state markets, and they are responsible, especially Miami, Tampa. This is from 2021, by the way. They are undeniably important. they're bringing not only volume, but when we factor in the trip nights, they're in your destination in mass. But then you see this cluster that's over to the right. Those are those out-of-state destinations that are staying longer. They're further along that x-axis. So again, in-state responsible for more volume, out-of-state responsible there for those longer lengths of stay. So how can we optimize those two markets? Different ways here. So length of stay here, you can increase your length of stay with these in-state markets. Think of incentives or any way that you can entice those in-state visitors just to do one more stand-up paddleboard activity, or have just one more meal, or take just one more shopping trip. And then it's very different at that strategic level rather than that tactical level. Growing volume, increasing awareness of Lee County, especially because it's a crowded marketplace. There are a lot of beaches, even in Florida, that visitors can go to. Reaching those markets and making them aware of Lee County's unique offering and experience is really important. We want to see those little bubbles grow with these key out-of-state markets and see those in-state markets. Maybe the bubbles shrink a little bit in terms of share, but they're going to move further to the right. So those are two really distinct strategies and tactics that you can take with those markets. And here we'll go into how they arrived. So going back to methodology, we just want to make clear here, there are different ways of measuring, and location data is just one angle on visitation. We're observing the movement of smartphones. How do we define a fly visitor? Well, we're looking at that overlap between two airports that we've mapped. We basically drawn a shape on a map around RSW and PGD, and we're looking at that overlap, that cross visitation between county visits, minimum one night in Lee County, and going to those airports. And what you notice, Punta Gorda Airport is obviously outside of Lee County, but we can still examine through location data that overlap. We're completely agnostic in this exercise to lodging type. So a lot of these visitors may be staying with friends and relatives, maybe they're in-state and they're driving. This includes all those visitors. We're just looking at the movement of smartphones, and we're expressing that in terms of total trips. The first way that we define drive markets is the absence of an airport trip. So if they did not go to RSW or Punta Gorda, that gives us a decent idea that maybe they drove. There can be exceptions, like if someone flew in through Atlanta and drove down, or they flew in through Orlando, or they're an international visitor. There are kind of gaps, but we think we have a good representation of what we call air share by mapping RSW and PGD, and we'll show you why. And the second way of measuring road trips is through our dedicated connected vehicle GPS panel, where we're monitoring vehicles around the US using the same type of GPS that's used for emergency situation. So just remember, we're not intercepting or actually talking to anybody about why they traveled and how many people are in their party. We're just measuring adults, no kids, no international here. So we just want to make sure you have a firm understanding of what we are and aren't measuring. So once we've done that, we map those two airports. We see that for intent overnight trips involve one of those two airports. And when we break that out further by origin market, here again, you have that very clear delineation between the in-state visitor. In green, we're showing the drive share, blue is fly share. So Miami, Tampa, Orlando, West Palm versus these out-of-state markets. So when we saw those averages, again, averages aren't everything. You really want to scratch beneath the surface and understand what is driving those, for lack of a better term. So blue is the fly share, and we can see that for a market like Chicago or New York, about 7 out of 10 are driving, higher for Minneapolis, further away. Atlanta, we actually see 7 and 10 are driving as opposed to flying. So it's quite different from market to market. And then looking just at drives, we were really happy to see that versus 2019, and 2019 is there in orange, 2020 there with that massive drop off in March and April is there in 2020, and then 2021 is here in blue. From March to December 2021, we saw that the road trip arrivals into Lee County were exceeding 2019 levels for overnights. Also happy to report, we actually update this report every day with a very minimal 2-day lag. January was down a bit, but February looks to be well above those 2019 levels too for 2022. So all positive indicators. Now let's shift gears and look at what's happening, not where they're coming from as much as what they're doing in market. So we do this through something called POIs, points of interest. This simply means, again, that we draw a shape around a place that the client has specified to us. Examples are the airports, we have districts, municipalities, beaches, retail, your downtown area, all sorts of different POIs, and we're going to show you just a sampling. Again, this is not exhaustive, but we put some rigor into making sure it's a representative sample of the different parts of Lee County, and hopefully you can find some actionable insights here. And this is just a breakdown by category of the three most popular POIs broken out. And here too, the category, a public park could also be a beach. It could also be considered an attraction. So it's very fluid how we define these, and they can be sliced and diced in any different way. But this is giving you an idea of that volume or that popularity amongst each of these different ones. So let's first look at flyers. Again, we're mapping just 2 airports, RSW and PGD. And what you see in the top here, these are some of the estimates of the flyers and the share of trips. That means we're calling it air share. So we see 9 out of 10 of those trips are coming through RSW and 1 out of 10 coming through Punta Gorda. This shows how long they're spending in each of the airports. Just very high level airport insights. We have much deeper in our other platforms. And then some of the seasonality of the travelers. If you look here, over 30% of flyers are arriving in March and April, highly seasonal. Here we see the breakdown. So this is your fly market at a glance. It's actually led by Chicago. And this is interesting. A lot of Florida, New York is the top fly market. Here for you, it's very clearly Chicago. You have a lot of Midwestern markets here. Minneapolis is number 2, followed by New York at 7.7%, and then Detroit, Cleveland, Philly, Indianapolis. And what we have here, this is the share of total trips. And this is the average unique nights that they're spending in Lee County. And one of the things that popped out to us is that as you move here down to Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, responsible for 2% of fly trips, they're staying an average of 6.1 nights or 7.1 days in market, a little higher even than that average flyer who's staying essentially five nights or 6 days in Lee County. So some of these markets, they might not be the ones that you instantly think of, but they do have some potential to grow based on their populations. Average miles traveled, we've looked at some of the cross visitation. So 53% visit Fort Myers Beach or Captiva Island, and a quarter of them also visit mapped public parks. About 3 in 4 are staying at least 4 nights in destination. So that's a quick snapshot of your flyer if you're an airport or you want to get to know your flyers better, or your origin markets a little bit better. Next, we'll look at a very different POI. We'll look at Fort Myers Downtown River District. And here again, we have a snapshot of some of the KPIs. We can also give you a picture of who is visiting. So very different origin markets here, whereas those flyers were coming from out of state here. Those top 4 markets are all in-state: Miami, Tampa, Orlando, and West Palm. What's really interesting, even though the top 4 is dominated there, top 5 is dominated by in-state markets, when it all shakes out, in-state was responsible for only 40.1% of trips outside of 50 miles. Again, we're not including locals here, outside of 50 miles of Lee County, and 60% were out of state. So One of the things, if you're a small business owner downtown, don't assume that they know about the events that are happening or what's around the corner. Take a minute to ask them where they're from and see if you can help them get to know some of your unique offerings. Don't assume that they've seen it on a website or in a guidebook. You have an opportunity to help animate the destination for them by telling them what's available, surprising and delighting them. So 60% actually travel from outside of 500 miles. Over half are staying at least 4 nights. And what this tells you is that you do have an opportunity to potentially help shape their trip, because they're staying a long time. August to October, definitely shoulder season. 2021, there can be the effect of tropical storms or hurricanes in the mix here. So with Florida, it's always a little hard to predict exactly how that fall time period is going to shake out. But that is what we would consider your shoulder period for the River District if you're planning events. Obviously, hurricane period, you have to have a backup plan. And then this does read as leisure. They're coming and browsing and experiencing it primarily during the weekends here. So if you can think about incentives, especially since you have a lot of in-state visitors, Miami, Tampa, Orlando, West Palm in particular, think about ways you can entice them to make a midweek visit. That could be really could be good for business. So that's a snapshot of downtown. Now let's go into retail. And again, here I want to reinforce, this is not an exhaustive list of every shopping establishment, but we chose 4 representative malls: Miramar Outlets, Gulf Coast Town Center, Coconut Point, and Sanibel Outlets. So here, 67.6% come from out of state, 32.4% come from in-state. About half of them are flying in via an airport. About 40% are going to the beach. You can see a breakdown here of how long they're staying in each mall. So Miramar Outlets is here. They're actually staying the longest at your mall, or spending the longest there across your trip. If you're Sanibel Outlets, maybe you can find a way to get them to stay a little bit longer. So a little bit of competitive intel there for you. They're traveling on average about 800 miles to come to Lee County, and that includes a shopping trip with you. And we see 3 kind of busy seasons. Here we see spring break. We see another one in midsummer, maybe shopping for starting to think about the next season, or even getting into a little bit of this back to school. And then you see this pop up again as they start to shop, even though snowbirds starting to shop for holiday gifts. If you have an opportunity to get them to visit again during the midweek, try to incentivize that, especially with those in-state visitors. Here, Miami and Tampa are the top shoppers in terms of share. They're obviously not staying as long. New York, Chicago's staying nearly 6 nights or 7 days in destination. If you can even encourage them to do some cross visitation with shopping and retail, that would be a win. Again, they're staying a long time, at least 4 nights. It's 63% of them, and traveling a long distance to get there. So you want to take advantage of those behaviors. Okay, now we'll get into our last 2 points of interest. We're looking at Fort Myers Beach, and here you can see a little snapshot. It's small, but of this island, it includes some lodging, it includes the beaches. Total volume, length of stay, miles traveled, you see that breakdown. Over 80% are from out of state. Again, keep in mind, we're not looking at local visitation. If we were, those percentages would shift more towards in-state, but we're really looking at what we would consider to be a visitor, someone who's traveling at least 50 miles. Here again, most of them staying at least 4 nights. 80% of them are traveling at least 500 miles, and you can see both in-state and out-of-state mixed in here. Chicago is your #1 origin market for out-of-state, so get to know those Chicago visitors. Minneapolis, a lot of Midwestern markets here in the mix as well. and Captiva Island. This is a screenshot of the point of interest that we have mapped for Captiva Island, and you can see that they're staying a little bit longer than that Fort Myers Beach visitor. You can see where they're coming from. Actually, the number 1 and 2 markets are both from in-state, followed by New York and Chicago. So 2 very different origin market draws. So get to know that visitor. Hopefully this helps. It also gives you this guide to how long they're staying, which is how long you might have to influence them and the activities, the excursions that they go on, the attractions they visit. Think about where they're coming from and what you have to offer that they don't have back home. And here, let me just flip back for comparison. Here, Fort Myers Beach, going backwards, July was the top month for visitation, a lot of that being driven by 4th of July. And you can see, that for Captiva, that seasonality is actually different, where March and April, that spring break period, are dominating and are higher than July. So the origin markets are different in and out of state mix. Time spent is different seasonality. So if you're thinking about shoulder seasons or midweek opportunities, tactics, strategy, hopefully this can help to guide your decisions. Now, if we have anyone from the state parks who's joined, we've ranked POIs. These are the top 15. We've removed this concept of categories and just ranked them from the number 1 position to number 15 for length of stay in Lee County. We were curious, if you visit a POI, how long are you staying on average? And Lovers Key State Park had the top length of stay overall at 6.6 days in Lee County. Miramar Outlets, if you visit Miramar Outlets, your average length of stay is going to be 6.2 days. Captiva at 6.2 days. So interesting to see the mix of where they're going and what kind of visitor is likelier to stay longer. So I know we want to leave some time for Q&A. Very quickly, I want to go through some key takeaways, and you'll be provided this deck afterwards. So don't worry about all of the detail here. This will be provided to you. But my purpose today was to show you what location data is doing for Lee County in terms of actionable insights, but also give you some more granular ideas of who is visiting specific points of interest that you may be involved with or that you may represent. And also give you the sense that Lee County is gaining ground in Florida overall. And we think that is a product of the awesome experience and natural experience that you have in Lee County and those amenities and resources, but also the people who are doing the marketing, who are reaching these far-flung markets and really helping to maintain and grow competitive share for Lee County, especially during the pandemic recovery. So out-of-state visitors in terms of trip share are becoming more important. It's important to get to know them, what's different in Lee County and how you can appeal to them and how you can surprise and delight them. Don't assume that they know everything there is to do. And if I could give you just 2 takeaways, one would be try to increase the length of stay of your in-state visitors. They are critical, especially in crisis. They have a more nuanced understanding of geography. They're going to have lower risk perceptions. They're going to know when it's safe to travel. You don't want to alienate them. You don't want to alienate in-state. You don't want to alienate your drivers either. But do get to know those flyers and those out-of-state visitors who are staying longer. They are very valuable. And it is critical to stay in those markets and again, maintain that competitive share. So a little on tactics as well as strategy. We provided you insights on those airport visitors. Midwest shows an increasing share of flights. You can better get to know the river district visitors, your retail visitors, your island and beach visitors. And again, we'll provide this to you so you can peruse it. And this can be your location data dashboard for making data-driven decisions. Okay, so we'll turn it over to Q&A, but I do want to make sure if you joined late that you're seeing that there are these industry insights webinars that are lined up, Arrivalist being the first, and then other partners including Expedia, Sojourn, and Key Data. that will be in the future. And so at this point, I'd like to open the floor to questions for Arrivalist, for MMGY. Anyone has a question, you can use, I believe it's the chat feature or the questions box, and we'll be here to answer any of those questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Timony. We do have one question in here. Donna from the Sundial on Sanibel Island. She noticed that on the visitation profile slides that you shared with us, you referenced Fort Myers Beach and Captiva, and she's wondering if you were also able to drill down into Sanibel if they were interested in seeing some information on Sanibel.
Absolutely, we'd love to do that. And when we share this deck, we can follow up with a slide on Sanibel. That's a great question. One of the reasons that that was not included in the lineup is we categorized Sanibel as one of the municipalities so that we could better line it up with places like Cape Coral or Fort Myers. But again, those categories are, a POI can fit into multiple categories. So we'd be very happy to provide that snapshot of Sanibel Island to you.
Thank you so much. Well, that concludes the questions that were typed into the questions box. Friendly reminder to the attendees, if you do have any questions, feel free to type them in. I'll read them out for you, but at this point, I'll hand it back over to the team.
But also include Cape Coral, and I think she just answered. Or just
Yeah, another question just came in, Timony. Can you also include Cape Coral? So I'm not sure how you had Cape Coral categorized.
Yes, we actually just did an analysis of Cape Coral. And as long as it's okay with the VCB team, we can provide a snapshot of Cape Coral too. Again, we have 46 points of interest. So we know that Cape Coral and Sanibel are very important. So we just wanted to show you kind of a sampling, but we'd be very happy to provide that as well. One of the great things about dashboards is that whether it's for location data with Arrivalist or it's what the agency team has built pulling in different data sources, is that it does provide those KPIs at your fingertips. So it's very easy to do and happy to incorporate that.
There are no other questions in our question box at this time.
All right, TJ, Alana, is there anything that you would like to add from the MMGY perspective in terms of, how our media is affected by any of this data? Or TJ, we've been also doing a lot of talking about our audience targeting. Anything you guys want to throw in before we wrap things up today?
I can't think of anything in particular. Obviously, we're excited to be rolling out the updated persona work coming up here in the next really few weeks. But no, other than that, I think we're good here.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, once again, I just wanted to thank all of the industry partners who joined us on the webinar this morning. And of course, a big shout out to TJ and Alana with our agency, MMGY. And Timothy, you did a fantastic job on our behalf this morning. You always do a fantastic job for us, helping us make sense of all the data that's available to us. Thank you so much again for being here. I believe you really do have superpowers, like Jake Steinman said. So I appreciate that. That'll do it for us today. It's a good day, and we hope everyone has a good rest of your week. We'll see you next time. Again, thanks for being here, and have a great rest of your week. So long, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.